if you know your client's problem better than they do, and you can speak to that problem before you even talk about a feature or benefit. You just talk about the problem that they have, and you know it intimately, that at the end of it, you just earn the right to ask for their business. Sales is a transfer of emotion. So it's like, you need to be in a good place. You need to take care of yourself. Like, I think sales isn't just like your day job. It's like, how do you take care of yourself? What do you do outside of work? What kind of relationships do you have? Like, that all shows up, like that congruency shows up in how you present yourself. The first one, the advice I would give to new sellers, have sex with everyone. So first is S, so smile. Second thing is eye contact. And then the last one is
pipeline in the building.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Only Pipeline in the Building. I'm super excited to kick this episode off for two reasons. One is that I booked tickets to Mr. Sean Hector's bachelor party. Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
Which going to happen later on this year. We're going to have some live recording of Only Pipeline in the Building.
Yeah, right.
Maybe.
Yeah, right.
Maybe. And yeah, for the second reason is that it's the first episode where we interview someone to talk to us about their experience and to help us educate around sales and marketing. And Sean, who did we bring in?
Yeah, so we interviewed our first person, and so this was someone from my network and I guess my friendship circle, and someone who's also coming into the bachelor party in a couple months. And so his name is Sean Hennessey. So for those that are listening out there, not to be confused with Sean Hector, which is me. One of my best friends' name is also Sean Hennessey. And so Sean was the first person that's joined us. Yuval and I wanted a bit of a low stakes environment in order to get our interviewing skills kind of improved, or make sure that we were in a good spot in terms of interviewing guests. So we wanted to start with Sean. And so Sean Hennessey is one of the top performing reps at Indeed Canada. He and I met at a company called Top Hat. I'd say about 8 years ago now. It's crazy how time. And so Sean is basically a senior enterprise account executive for Indeed. He's working with some of their largest accounts. He's also a team lead at Indeed, and he's been there for about 4 or 5 years now. And as I said, even throughout kind of all the pandemic strife and the changes in the technology landscape in Canada, he's consistently been the number one rep at Indeed. And so it's not easy, Yuval, to have such an impressive friend, but I do get to learn a lot from him. And so I hope that those out there also get to learn a lot from him over this next little bit. So Yuval, what did we talk about throughout the podcast with him?
Yeah, so we actually touched a lot of subject to, we were talking about, like you said, the Canadian tech industry. We touched a little bit for your guys' experience there, but also on how to become a top performer. Like, what are the skills, the attributes you need to have in order to really succeed? It got me going, I can tell you that. And also about the AI and what he sees as the potential, the risks for salespeople and closers with using AI or being replaced by AI. So this was really insightful for me, and I hope that our listeners are going to find it as insightful.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they will. To drop a little clues to one of the things that we'll talk about is Sean Hennessey actually does tell us to have sex with everyone. Sex is an acronym, but I'm not going to reveal what that is until you guys listen to the rest of the podcast. So enjoy.
Let's go. We've got here with us Sean Hennessey of Indeed.com, and we want to talk to Sean a little bit about sales. It's a little bit confusing. We've got two Seans, but we'll power through, right? So, Sean,
Yeah.
let us know where you came from and a little bit about your path. Yeah.
Yeah. What I was going to say, what might make things easier, a lot of my friends just literally know me as Hennessey. It might be easier just to call me Hennessey and then call him Sean. That way there's no confusion going forward.
All right. Hennessey, tell us a little bit about your path. How do you know on Hector? And yeah, let's kick it off.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, first off, gentlemen, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of chapters in my book. I guess like ever since I was young, I just kind of had a passion for solving problems and ultimately helping people. And throughout doing all of that, I realized I had a knack for communication or the gift for gab, if you will. So I've had a pretty storied career, but so far, although Indeed's my main day job, I like to think of myself as a man of the people. And just in terms of like servicing and understanding the sales world, if you will. In terms of how I know Sean, though, that's a pretty funny story of a startup that him and I worked at together. I don't know, Sean, do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, sure. I can kick it off. So Sean or Hennessey and I have been friends since it was 2018. So coming on 8 years of friendship, right? And so I find personally, I basically take one really good friend from every company I work with. So like Hennessey, you were from Top Hat, Yuval, you were from Sysaid. I'm still interviewing people at Customer Gauge, but I think it says a lot about the caliber of the people on this call ultimately that our friendships have lasted so long. And so ultimately, Hennessey and I were hired at the same organization. It was at the time considered a Canadian unicorn, right? And I had just made a switch from kind of executive recruitment into the world of tech sales. And so Hennessey and I actually started on the same day. We walked into the training room where all the new recruits ultimately sit and get introduced to the company. And, me personally, I'm like, all right, I'm going to wow everyone in there. I'm going to impress them. So I wore a blazer, right? Button up, tucked in.
Kid was
to
looking
my
good.
pants.
Kid was looking good.
Yeah. And, I think the one thing that comes into people's minds when you start at a new job and you're like, it's the first day of the rest of my life, is like, you want to make a name for yourself, right? You want to be unique. And so, I turned to my left and I introduced myself to the person to my left. I say, hey, I'm Sean. He says, I don't know, Ian, what have you. I turn to my right and I say, hey, my name's Sean. He says, my name's Sean. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, fuck. And I go, I'm Sean Hector. He's like, I'm Sean Hennessey. I'm like, fuck. Basically twins starting on the same day at this organization. And I think we generally hit it off right away. Hennessey, I
I didn't
know.
really like you that much. I pretended to, but yeah, no, I think so.
Yeah, it grows up on you. Sean grows up on you. Yeah. 100%.
He does. It took a little bit of time. We were forced into it. We actually, interestingly enough, we were in what was called Sales University. It was like a 6-week boot camp where they taught you all the fundamentals of sales from like the beginning to the end. And yeah, throughout that, I was just kind of forced to like him a little bit more, I suppose.
And we were selling educational technology, right? Primarily into the States, just a couple different product lines. So we were in slightly different jobs, Hennessey, but
we had very similar jobs, but I was selling the dream. So one of the things that I sold to professors was individual authorship. So basically the idea that we had this platform with millions of trillions, I don't know if you want to just add a bunch of zeros there, of students where we would be able to facilitate you writing a book in your domain, your area of expertise, and we would provide a distribution network and convince other students to buy it. Now, the reality was no one was ever going to buy your shitty book, but somebody had to be a salesperson to not only get them to write the book, but sell them that dream. There was other products we did, which was like digital engagement. So like in the classroom, like our students actually engaged as opposed to just being like a number in a lecture hall. So there actually was a lot of merit to the company that we worked at. I truly actually did believe that when we first started, it might be, a place to really build our roots, build a bunch of equity, have a nice little exit. Again, Canada's top startup in 2017, and it did not go that way. It turned into, trying to think of, I don't know if people have seen Game of Thrones. You know how someone like dies every episode? It was just like, don't get attached. Like there was just like constantly churn and burn through sales reps, but it taught me a lot. It was definitely like a foundation that I think him and I can both say set us up for success in our careers now.
And so Hennessey, you've been a salesperson for your whole life, essentially, right? Maybe talk a little bit about what brought you to Top Hat, some of the experiences that you had.
Sure. Yeah. So I think back in the day, it started out, my first like sales job, if you will, was at Mark's Work Warehouse. I used to be the guy that came in and you're buying like construction boots or Carhartt or whatever. So I was there for like 3.5 years and I learned some basic sales stuff. Now, the shitty thing about that job is they made the mistake of showing me their green screen, which is just basically the pricing of their boots, for example. So I was a top salesman there for 3 years and they would show me, for example, a green screen where some of these boots cost like 30 or 40 bucks and I'm selling them for 300 bucks. Remember one day in particular, I sold like 16 pairs of boots. At the end of my second year, I guess this was my third year because I was fed up. My boss, I won't say his name, not necessarily the smartest guy, took me into his room, sat me down and said, hey, Sean, you're a top performer. You're doing great. We really value you here. We want to give you a raise. And so he hands me the form and I look at it and it says right on it that Sean is a herd worker, HERD, and I was getting a 10-cent raise. So I was like, wow, per hour, right? So I'm making like 15 bucks an hour. I'm making shit all money. Now, the Mark's Work Warehouse that I worked at was inside of a Canadian Tire. And there was these guys that used to be standing there all the time and they'd be selling cleaning products, steak knives, all that stuff. And one day I just had a conversation. I was like, I think I could do this. And I found out they were making more money than I was. So the next stage of my career was actually selling steak knives and cleaning products. So I was quite literally like the sham wow guy, if you will, for a bit. The one note that I'd have with that, though, is it really makes me feel proud of the company that I work for now at Indeed, because I think it's really important to work for a company that you believe in, like their values, their mission, and you're ultimately selling a product or service that helps people. When I worked for this steak knife cleaning company, it was just basically products that we would pitch inside Canadian Tire. What my job was, I would basically grab a telephone, sort of like when you're on an airplane, and be like, attention shoppers, there's a huge promotion coming on. Come on down to like the front of the store. And we basically gather like 15 or 20 people and do a sales presentation. One thing always stood with me throughout this, because one time I'm doing this and basically I get everyone in front of me and I'd say, hey, this knife right here, actually before getting into that, let me ask you, like, Yuval, like what kind of knives do you have at home right now? What do you use? Do you know what kind of knives?
Steel.
Off guard.
Steel knives.
Steel knives.
Chop.
Chop.
That's
okay.
better. Sharp.
Okay.
Sharp knife.
So I'd ask questions. I'd be like, so some people would say Henkel, some people would say dollar store knives. I'd be like, okay, cool. Me too. Whatever. Next thing is I'd pull out the knives that I was selling and I'd be like, hey, this knife right here, Yuval, it's made of surgical grade stainless steel. It'll never break. It'll never go dull, and you'll never need to replace it again. Now, I'm sure you've heard that before, but let me show you something. My next trick is I'd pull out a fucking sledgehammer, pardon my French, and I would start cutting through the sledgehammer with this knife. And I'd done this countless times, but one time in particular, while I was doing this, the knife breaks. So what do? Thinking quickly on my feet, there's 20 people in front of me. I pull out the exact same steak knife, do my whole presentation, triple price breakdown, all the rest. At the end of it, 2 people walked away with a set of steak knives and cutting boards, and I lost my faith in humanity and I hated myself. So I literally quit like 2 days later, because I was just like, I'm selling a shit product. I'm not providing any value. And if I do this any longer, like I'm going to hate myself. So fast forward that was, you've got a question there. What's up?
Yeah, no, don't stop. I'm just mentioning that to Sean. But in my company, I work for WalkMe. And one of the plays that we run something that's called a group demo, right?
Okay.
So it's a little bit like you are describing. You get around like, sometimes it's 100, sometimes it's, 10 people around demoing the product, which is basically what you did. So I want to ask you about some like advantages or disadvantages to this technique rather than the one-to-one type of demo meeting.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is in the sales process, social selling is really, really powerful. I think back to when Sean and I worked at Top Hat. One of the tricks with Top Hat is a lot of companies would go top down as opposed to top or bottom up. So, and that was a very difficult red tape filled process. So when you went bottom up and you got professors involved, once one was sold, you could kind of like leverage them as evidence that the next person would be effective. Now, in terms of doing those sales, like in a group environment, I haven't really done that since when I was selling steak knives. I've definitely done presentations to people that, there's 12, 15 people on a call, but it's a little bit different than having multiple, like I wouldn't have multiple other salespeople with me on that. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's some of my experiences with that.
All right.
What's the name of the company that you're at again? I'm just
Walk
curious
Me.
on the actual WalkMe. I'm just curious about that group sales process. What does that look like?
Yeah, so for some like use cases or features or even just new releases of products, then we have a lot of different mechanisms, right? But to train all the salespeople globally and to train all and to really amplify the same messaging across board, sometimes it's really difficult to do really quickly. Like you really need to get the salespeople to understand the product, to know how to demo it, to run through all the training, right? It takes time. So we want to start the selling motion even before the salespeople are ready to actually demo the product. So we use this mechanism to attract people and even to gain this first understanding of whether this product feature or capability is something that people are actually searching for, and to get feedback for the demo. So once it's going to be presented in a one-to-one, one-to-few, then we'll be in a much better place in how we tell the story, present the product, go through the different features and so on.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it's a little bit different than what I do currently, and so it's interesting. I actually was just in Mexico at the beginning of the month here, and my girlfriend and I got sold on basically talking to someone at the resort. They're like, "Hey, if you go check out this other resort, Secrets, we'll actually give you $200 USD, and there's a bunch of promotions and stuff." Little did we know, it's like a full blown sales presentation, and so they give us a tour. We got to eat breakfast there for free, but when we show up, it was first off, it was terrible. But we walk in, and what happened is we're in a room. It's like kind of like a conference room. And as soon as we walk in, there's like four white dudes at the back. And all of a sudden they like ring a bell and like start clapping as if someone bought something. But I looked around and there's no one in this room that's a buyer. Like it clearly was a tactic of like social selling. Other people are buying it. Don't be the one who's not. So it's just a really hokey thing. I think when you do it in a compelling, authentic way and people are all bought in, like back in the day, I used to go on other people's calls, like junior reps, and be like, "Hey, I'm a product manager or I'm a product specialist in something," even though I have the exact same role as them. It's just another voice of authority that can kind of back them up. And sometimes if you're selling to multiple people, it's easier to have like, multiple people talking to multiple people as opposed to one versus 15 or something like that. So it's really interesting how every company goes about it differently, but I do think there's some methods are more effective than others for sure.
Yeah. And I think, coming back to the previous point, Hennessey, I think one of the biggest things that I've really enjoyed about watching you sell and how you developed your career is like you talked about like, hey, this was a shitty product. I don't believe in it. Move on from this. Is that there's a good sense of ethics and morality to what you do, in spite of the application of like, practical sales techniques in order to, we talk about social selling, we talk about labeling, it's all psychological communication or interpersonal communication, right? And so I think that's ultimately what's potentially made you so successful over the years. And to that end, I know that you have been the top performing rep at Indeed these last several years. You've got the glass plaques on your desk to he looks over to the
I got some
to
hardware
prove
here.
it. And so I wonder, I mean, obviously, like you built a really good foundation, selling steak knives. We didn't touch on, I know you've sold furnaces as well. And then you tried to live the dream with Top Hat. But maybe talk a little bit about the environment that you found yourself in with Indeed that has allowed you or enabled you to, find success year after year, especially in these trying times, pandemic, COVID, recessions, all that sort of stuff.
At least you said trying times. If someone ever says to me like unprecedented times, I'm just like, I don't want to hear it. I have nothing to do with that. Yeah, well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I think first and foremost is I really respect sales as a profession. I think that if you do it properly and you think about it, like you're solving people's problems, right? And especially if it's a product or a service that actually solves it, that's something that you can take pride in. I always hated the idea of like these slimy car salesman people, or even myself when I was selling steak knives and whatever. That's not really providing a lot of value. For me, I think at Indeed, what's allowed me to thrive really is I've been able to take different sales processes I've learned at other companies and really turn it into my own thing. And I won't say I've perfected it. I definitely am learning every single day. But for me, I think it's about providing an experience for buyers more than anything, especially with AI. I'm sure you guys might want to talk about that later, but being authentic, having fun, and ultimately, like what I do is I've always found that if you know your client's problem better than they do, and you can speak to that problem before you even talk about a product about a feature or benefit, you just talk about the problem that they have, and you know it intimately. I almost become like a doctor at the end of it all. We've had this conversation. Like, first off, like how have I gone about gathering the information? How have I presented the information to you? How do I present something to you? And how do I ask you of something, right? How do I close? And I think that if you've done all these things correctly, that at the end of it, you just earn the right to ask for their business. It's like, hey, look, I have conviction in the solution that I have for you. And, you've answered all their questions. You're not trying to pull a fast one. You learn all these tactics, these things from like Chris Voss, the mirroring, the labeling, fear of loss, urgency, greed, indifference, all these things. I think you learn all that stuff to unlearn it, because the second that if I'm on a call with someone, there's a classic objection handling technique, which is like feel, felt, found. It's very elementary, very junior. If someone says that to me, like you've immediately lost me. I know that you're not listening anymore. You're thinking about some tactic in the back of your mind about how you're going to pull a fast one on me. And I think just in today's day and age, there's a lot of information out there. So it's just like providing a good experience for people. And, again, having some fun with it.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, you touched on some really good things here. And I'm just coming off my company kickoff. We spoke to a sales trainer by the name of Ross Morgan, and when I first came into this organization, Customer Gauge, I still had the lessons from like Oren Clough, like in the back of my head, right, which is pitch anything.
Yeah, one of
And
my
like as a
favorites.
young salesperson, as one of the first books I read, I'm like, power move this, power move that. It's all about like balance of control within a conversation, right? And like that's how that's kind of how a lot of people first experience sales, either being sold to and being like, oh, that was a little sleazy. I could tell you was trying something there, or to actually like apply those techniques. And that's not to say they're not effective, but there's a lot to say about accountability, right? Ownership, transparency and honesty within your relationship with your customer, as well as like also asking for the hard questions, right? Or asking the hard questions, which is number one, asking for the business, but also like challenging them in a certain way so that they can think about the problem or your product in the way that you want, I suppose. I'm not sure, like, I guess my question ultimately is like, how have you seen yourself mature over time to either get that perspective, or was it always innate in how you approach things?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like I've always been very cerebral or process driven. Whenever I'm going like about my job, like I think about how am I getting them from point A to point B. I don't like what's the guy from Wolf of Wall Street? Forget his Jordan
Jordan
Bell.
Belfort.
I don't like Jordan Belfort, but one of the things he has is like straight line persuasion. I can get into all these different stuff, but it's like how do you get a client from A to B where they're ultimately buying? And it's on a scale of 1 to 10, your
Mm,
company, your product, and you. How does the client feel about that?
it's
So
conviction.
for me, yeah, and I was actually just going to get into that, like the
Sorry.
conviction piece, right? It's like how do you come across? Because again, I think I've mentioned it before, but I really do believe sales is a transfer of emotion. So it's like you need to be in a good place. You need to take care of yourself. Like I think sales isn't just like your day job. It's like how do you take care of yourself? What do you do
Mm,
outside of work? What kind of relationships do you have? Like that all shows up, like that congruency shows up in how you present yourself. But yeah, again, I talk about the unlearning. So if anyone wants like a breakdown of my sales correct, like my learnings that have helped me, like it starts with like how to win friends and influence people. Then it's spin selling. Then it's the challenger sale. And then it's pitch anything maybe. And then maybe some Chris Voss stuff. And then as soon as I learned all that stuff, read it all, it's just like forget it all, throw it all out, and then
mm.
know it, but don't be a robot, I guess.
And so you've stepped into maybe the last 2 years, a team lead role where you're actually actively coaching other members of your team. Maybe if you could talk a little bit about either some of the unlearning that you've helped others with when it comes to these techniques that some people may bring into this role, or if there are no examples, maybe just talk about like what's the number one thing that you're really coaching today into your reps.
Yeah. So thinking about that, like fortunately at Indeed, like there's a lot of very senior sales reps that I've worked with for a very long time. But I think one of the things that I've had a learning on is like everyone has their own sales process, their own way of doing things. My methodology isn't going to necessarily be the best methodology for everyone. Some people are better at building personal relationships and they don't even need to worry about any of the hard questions or asking an impact question or needs payoff. Like that doesn't even come up for them. But I think what I'm trying to teach people more than anything right now is just to think about their process. Whatever their process is, can you do it consistently?
Mm,
Because if you just show up and you just free ball it every single time, you can get lucky, right? But if you have success, well then try to emulate that. Try to emulate it again. And if can you make tweaks? So whatever that process is, just think about it from beginning to end. Know that you're running some sort of process. Because with my role, like there's a lot of account management in it. And sometimes people can have conversations where it just goes off to Pluto. It's great to build rapport, connect, find how people are going. But if I just talk about my vacation to Mexico or their vacation to Mexico for 25 minutes and we spend 5 minutes talking about the problem, you're not making any sales that day. So it's just being
mm.
mindful of, again, how do you control the conversation but facilitate a great buying experience, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And that's process within a call. So structure potentially for yourself. And I used to always say to my reps as well, like the best salespeople are the most organized, right? In terms of like looking at who you're reaching out to, how you're doing that, and how you're conducting those conversations themselves. Do you want to chime in with anything, Yuval?
I'm just, thinking of my perspective as a buyer because in my role, I hold one of the biggest budget items for the companies I work for. A lot of people come to me and say, "We want your business." Right? So I talk to a lot of Sean's, not Fitz, but I speak to a lot
Squared.
of
Sean
Sean's.
squared.
Yeah, and you could see the difference. And most of the salespeople I talk to, they don't do this probing. Like I'm really into this. What is your pain? If someone is in a Zoom call with you, they didn't come because they have nothing else to do. They came because they think that you can solve one or many of their problems. They came to vent in a way. And you guys kind of take this role of a psychologist, right? And if you're a good psychologist, you make sure that they come and they pay and they give you the retainer or whatever that is, right? And also that they get better. So I'm really into this doctor, but for me, the doctor is the doctor of psychology, right? That's my view on this. But yeah.
Yeah, I actually like that a lot. Like there was a sales leader at Top Hat back in the day who taught us this, and it was like taking people to the pain cave, if you will. So you
The
uncover a
pain
problem,
cave? Who said that?
whatever it might be.
The pain
Uh
seller.
Tell me after. Tell me
yeah,
after.
yeah, get into it. But it was essentially if you uncovered a pain of theirs, well, basically take the knife, stick it in, and twist it. And I don't mean to be graphic, but it's like, well, what's the impact to you? What does that mean for the business? What does that mean? Like, are you gonna not get a promotion because we don't do this? Like, just keep going, right? And the whole point being is like get them to tell you it all so that they feel that. And it's that transfer of emotion, right? Where you're not trying to be an asshole, but it's just like you have a problem. Like for me, I work in the recruiting space. It's like some of these companies, like there's trucking companies, and there you can be uh, 3PL, which means you don't own your trucks, third party logistics, or you can be asset based. Some of these people own their trucks, and it's just the most basics of questions. Like if you own a trucking company, I said, hey, how many drivers are you looking to fill? And you say 10. I'm like, okay, how many trucks do you have sitting there? Like 15. I'm like, okay, well, how much money do you make per month per truck? And they're like $25,000, and it's like per truck. I'm like, so if I do that, multiply it by 15, at the end of my sales presentation, I'm like, okay, the solution I'm presenting to you today costs $10,000. They're like, oh, that's too much money. I'm like, wait a minute, Yuval, earlier you told me that if you had this many drivers, you'd be making X number of dollars. Does it not just make business sense? Like, and then you can have those hard conversations because you have all that information. I think the best sellers, especially like people who try to shadow me and they're like, what's your silver bullet? What's your closing tactic? I honestly don't believe in closing tactics. I think that if you just ask good questions, you don't have to have some slimy bullshit closer, if you will.
Yeah,
Makes
talking about
sense.
slimy closures. When Sean Hector pitched you for this interview, right? Then he said that you have like a very specific view on AI and the role of AI for sales and closers. So, what's your view on this?
Yeah. Way to put me on the spot there, Sean. I think AI is a really powerful tool, and I think it's just gonna it you can't be a Luddite, right? You have to grow with it. You have to use it where you can. So for me personally, like there's a lot of ways where I'm using AI to like filter emails, draft responses, but I'll never send any AI slop email, if you will. I think as I was saying earlier at the beginning, if there's something that you can take away from this podcast today for the sales role, is just try to humanize it as much as possible. I'm intentionally writing emails nowadays, not necessarily with spelling mistakes, but where it's clearly not written by AI. I'm not, before I used to have like perfect grammar. I've kind of slowed down a little bit. It's like you can tell that I've sent this out almost like a text message, if you will, sometimes, where it's just like you feel like you're talking to a friend. And yeah, I just think salespeople need to be aware that like their jobs are on the line, right? If you don't provide an exceptional buying experience, if there's a way for a company to basically take the product or service that you sell and put it into like a chat GPT of sort where they ask a series of questions and they come up with a solution at the end, when the question like begs the question, it's like, well, what's the value of the sales rep? Right. And so I'm constantly aware of that. I think about that, but I do think people like dealing with people. Right. And I think like, for example, I'm a big investor in Reddit. I believe that like long-term people are going to have that desire for human connection, human answers. And so I hope that that remains the same thing for enterprise level sales. But yeah, just if you get an email from a client and you punch it into ChatGPT and you just send it like that, good luck. You probably don't have a great relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're at the cusp of a very interesting time, as everyone knows, when it comes to AI. And Hennessy, my thesis, right, is as if you look 5-10 years out, my thesis is that like BDRs, SDRs, like that role will probably eventually disappear, in a sense of like people want answers right away to their questions. They want to be able to get the information that they're looking for And if it's not easy to buy from your company, as we all know, you got to make yourself easy to buy from. They'll go somewhere else, right? And so, at least from a top of funnel perspective, like that's what I'm actually going to focus on this year, which is trying to remove the burden of having BDRs and SDRs. And let's see if that actually works or not. But ultimately, maybe you can kind of change up that type of role and send them on site, right? Like send them to the office or something instead of having them hit fucking cold calls for 80 times a day. But I think in terms of like an account executive, I think you're probably right? Like people will continue to enjoy that human touch and relationship and the ability to build trust with you, right? Those are human skills and assets that just won't go away.
Yeah. One caveat that I'll say with that though is I believe that from the buyer's perspective, or I hope, like I think that buyers would much rather deal with a person, right? But I think from the business owner, like from like the tech company standpoint, if you think about the salaries that people in tech have been making for a very long time, it's like, do they really care that much about the buyer experience if they still walk away buying something and then you just don't pay the salary of these salespeople? So that's a question that begs to be answered. But regardless of that, sales is something that is transferable to all areas of your life. Like no matter where you go, like if I wanted to go to a certain restaurant tonight, well, I have to convince my girlfriend that that's the restaurant to go to. So how do you do it, right? Like you don't have to be a slime ball, but like it's about asking questions. It's about and she usually says, "I don't know. What do you want?" So that usually sets me up for that. I don't have to worry about that too.
And then you mirror back to her and you go, "What do I want?"
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, man. I think that's really key, right? Like we don't know what people will want. I know from a customer service perspective, as it stands today, like I am beyond annoyed at having circular arguments with AI that can't actually help me, and I just want someone to take pity on me, right? And actually like have empathy to like solve my problem. And so I hope that continues to shine through from an account executive perspective as well. I guess as we're getting close to the end of the podcast here, Hennessey, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask for your best piece of advice to give to a seller. It doesn't have to be a new seller, but someone in today's day and age. And tell me something funny that happened with a client recently, if you have anything top of mind, or like an awkward encounter, and what did you do about it?
Okay. So I've got to think about the second one there. The first one, the advice I would give to new sellers, have sex with everyone. And that's an acronym. I'll explain what that means, especially for people junior, an acronym. So have sex with everyone. So first is S, so smile. Second thing is eye contact. And then the last one is excitement. And I know excitement starts with an E, but for the sake of making this acronym fun, have sex with everyone. And that's a tool that when you're starting your career, really does help just for building relationships. Don't make this weird. But it's something it's fun, right? It's something that's quick.
Can you repeat it one more time? What's the S?
So S is smile. E is eye contact. And then the last one is excitement. So if you show up and you're like, "Hey, it's really great to meet you today," like and you bring that energy to start the conversation, even if you're going for a job interview, right? And you go back and maybe you're a more monotone person, that's fine. But at least it just shows like you're a little charged up. You're a little bit excited to chat with me, and you can start the transfer of emotion in sales from that starting. The second question that you asked me though is like, what's a funny story that I've had? Is that sorry? That's what it was?
Yeah, or awkward encounter, something that you learned from.
Man, I'm learning every day. I don't know that
I can give you some inspiration. Sean closed the deal in my previous company in a hot tub.
Yes.
With a prospect.
In Dominican Republic. Yeah. As an IT manager, Tormont Caterpillar, got talking to him and his wife and closed an $80,000 deal.
Okay. Actually, I got one for you. So this was 2 years ago. Thanks Yuval for stirring the juices there. 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, after we were coming out of COVID. COVID was 6 years ago. That's crazy. We were coming out of COVID. Recipe Unlimited was my client. So for Yuval, you might not know, but that's basically Kelsey's, Montana's, Swiss Chalet. It's like the largest restaurant chain in Canada. They're my client. And one of them was the Keg. And that's like a big franchise steakhouse in Canada here. Anyways, I'm pitching them on a big branding solution. It's like a $60,000 branding solution. Decided to bring them into the office. So we're in Yorkville in Toronto, and we go out to the one hotel, like swanky restaurant. To give you an idea, like a thing of broccoli costs $55. Like I was thankful that it was on the company dime. When we showed up though, there was like 2 Lamborghinis sitting out front. There was like huge security. Like we had a reservation obviously, but it was a whole thing to like get in. I'm there with my sales director at the time, Faraz, great guy. And I sit down with the client. Sure enough, we're sitting there, order a glass of wine. We're just getting caught up. Next thing you know, this girl hops the fence that's like across the way, comes over, sits down at our table, and immediately starts shoveling macaroni and food into her face, grabbing handfuls of broccoli, like the most expensive stuff. Everyone in this restaurant is shell shocked, like, because they're all swanky, like super high net worth people. Like, what's going on? Like, we had to wait in line. There's all this security. This girl, she's clearly, unfortunately, like homeless, mentally ill. Like, there's something going on. But you can imagine being there in a sales setting or when you're trying to put your best foot forward. And she also is like, she was a chief human resources officer for this company. And so she's very compassionate. So we just sit there and I'm like, excuse me, like, are you, I didn't know to say, I'm like, are you enjoying yourself? Like I asked like a question of just like, I'm in shock, right? Long story short, like security comes, they escort her out and stuff like that. A client was actually a sweetheart and was like, tried to give the person our food. And they were like, you can't give the people at the restaurant, like you can't give them the food. Like it's just, it'll encourage them to keep doing that kind of stuff. Anyways, long story short, it was just like one of those like crazy experiences. We got like our bill comped and all the rest. We go back to the office and I'm just like, could you believe that happened? Anyway, so our product is going to be about $60,000. Do you want to do that on Tuesday or Thursday? What's going to be best for you? So that's how that went.
Yeah. I was wondering about the segue. Like how are you going to, turn it back into, talking about the deal, right? And how you will be closing when a person just shoved in some macaronis into your mouth. Yeah, that's brilliant, man. Nothing had happened. Yeah, but $60,000, but you sign here, here, and here, right?
Yeah, very assumptive close.
Yeah. Play cool. Nothing happened. We didn't see anything. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Well, Sean, man, I really appreciate you joining us and being our first guest. Really, you can give us a rating or we can do some feedback after this if you'd like. I hope our questions were clear, but to everyone out there, I hope you enjoyed listening to one of the best salespeople in Canada, if not the world. And remember, kids, have sex with everyone.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun. See you guys.